Good evening, my little monsters. It's already midnight, and it's time for our story. Tonight, we travel back to Brazil, 1973, to unearth a crime so barbaric it defined a generation, the case of 8-year-old Araceli. The horror of her disappearance, kidnapping, drugging, torture, abuse, murder, and carbonization was quickly overshadowed by a truth too painful for society to accept: the powerful are untouchable. The paradox of this story is absolute. How can a nation be paralyzed by grief for a child, but completely fail to hold her powerful torturers accountable? This story became my first investigation, and my first great disappointment. You see, the suspects were not criminals from the slums, but the sons of traditional, wealthy, influential families in Espírito Santo. I promised to reveal the exact legal maneuvers that annulled the convictions of the guilty, allowing them to walk free after a powerful family paid the price of silence. Your knowledge must be sharpened, because this case proves that the system often protects the villains. Stay with me, and discover the devastating truth about the little girl who became a national symbol of abuse, and why, even today, her killers have never served a single day in prison. Araceli Cabrera Sanchez Crespo, the daughter of a Spanish electrician, Gabriel Crespo, and a Bolivian mother based in Brazil, Lola Sanchez, lived in Vitoria. The day was Friday, May 18, 1973. It was a seemingly normal day for the 8-year-old as she got ready to go to São Pedro school. Because of the bus schedule, Araceli's mother asked her to leave school early that afternoon. Araceli left the building and was seen by an adolescent in a nearby bar, exactly at the intersection of Ferreira Coelho and Cesar Hillel Avenues. This single witness, the adolescent at the Oasis bar, would be the only one to see her alive outside the bus. The witness said the little girl did not get on the bus. Instead, she stayed and played with the bar's cat. Tragically, after this brief, innocent moment, Araceli was never seen again, at least, not alive. This quick lapse of supervision was all it took for the darkness to descend. That very evening, Araceli's family plunged into panic. By nightfall, search efforts for the little girl had already begun. The anguish quickly took hold, and the case immediately began to gain national attention, a tragedy that would soon define an era in Brazil. During the initial search, both the police and Araceli's parents maintained a fervent belief that she was still alive. This hope was so strong that even parapsychologists and clairvoyants emerged, claiming they could sense that Araceli was alive and would be found. However, for days after the little girl disappeared, on May 24, a horrifying discovery was made. In a patch of scrubland behind the children's hospital, a body was found, completely disfigured and in an advanced state of decomposition. Though initially the father refused to recognize the corpse, later forensic tests confirmed the unthinkable: the unrecognizable body was Araceli. This is the part of the story that truly demands your attention, my little monsters: the sheer brutality inflicted upon Araceli. At only 8 years old, the child was murdered in a savage fashion. She was mutilated while under the effects of barbiturates, and then her body was coldly dumped in the scrubland behind the hospital. The official findings paint a devastating picture. Araceli was kidnapped, drugged, abused, tortured, murdered, and finally, carbonized. This heinous act fueled my own personal indignation. A child had been completely violated and assassinated. The police immediately launched an investigation into the horrific murder of Araceli. As I analyzed the official police reports, often spending entire nights awake trying to decipher the situation, I struggled to pinpoint a likely suspect. The search was blind, focused more on finding random threads than confronting the reality of the powerful community in which the crime occurred. Then came the crucial complaint from prosecutor Valmar Bermudez, a denunciation that finally broke the initial silence. This denunciation directly implicated 3 key suspects, all of whom were members of prominent, traditional, and wealthy families in Espírito Santo: Paulo Constantine, 27, Laura Wilson Cabral Gomez, 27, and Dante Barros Michelini, 53, along with his son, Dante Filho, 23. This revelation confirmed my worst suspicions. These were not criminals from the streets, they were young men of significant social status. As writer José Luzero later observed, rich young men whom no one could ever imagine would be involved in crimes like Araceli's case. The suspicion of their involvement instantly elevated the social stakes, and immediately drew a line of defense backed by immense resources. After investigating each suspect, the scale of their influence became alarmingly clear. The Michelini family possessed vast wealth earned as pioneers in coffee exports, which drove much of the city's economic growth. The Michelini family's political and economic importance was such that, in 1967, the city's main avenue was named after Dante Michelini. Imagine the power disparity. Police were expected to investigate the son of the man whose name was on the main street. I quickly understood that this was not a simple homicide case, it was a battle against an entire system. The Michelini patriarch, Dante Michelini, 53, allegedly used his extensive influence and ties within the military regime to actively obstruct and complicate the police investigation. The journalist and writer, José Luzero, detailed his findings in the powerful report novel, Araceli, My Love. This book was so threatening to the status quo that it was eventually censored by the military dictatorship at the explicit request of the accused lawyers. This blatant act confirmed that the Michelini family was not merely defending their son, they were using their political capital to suppress the truth and control the national narrative, a chilling display of impunity. The prosecution alleged that Araceli was kidnapped by Lauro and taken to a Michelini apartment on Camburi Beach. In that apartment, Araceli was supposedly drugged, assaulted, and abused by the young men, Dante Filio and Paolo. The accusation went further, stating that Araceli was tortured for an agonizing 72 hours. The medical examination later confirmed the excess of barbiturates, indicating she had been in a coma. The denunciation claimed that Dante Michelini Sr., the most powerful man in the family, used his widespread influence and his deep connections with the police to actively obstruct the investigative work. This interference had a devastating result. Not only were the investigations severely hindered, but some of the crucial key witnesses in the case also died mysteriously. This suggests that the powerful forces involved were willing to do anything, including manipulating the legal process and eliminating witnesses, to ensure that the truth about the murder of Araceli remained buried. The response from the accused during the initial investigation was a wall of silence. They avoided speaking to the press and were difficult to locate. However, reports soon surfaced of crucial witnesses being suborned, meaning they were bribed or intimidated, and allegations that alibis were being forged by police officials. Two key informants eventually spoke to the police, Marisly I. Fernandez Bones, a former mistress of Paolo, and Laura Wilson Cabral Gomez, a mechanic. One informant claimed that Paolo had requested a doll, a chilling detail, to lure the little girl days before the crime. The same report alleged that Dante Michelini Sr. was actively destroying evidence and buying the silence of both witnesses and authorities. It was at this juncture that I recognized the monumental scale of the corruption. After years of investigation and intense personal commitment, I finally saw a ray of hope. In 1980, Judge Newton Sear was convinced that the three main suspects had participated in the crime against Araceli. Sear delivered a groundbreaking ruling, convicting Dante Filio of a lesser crime, 5 years in prison, and Laura Wilson Cabral Gomez of the murder, 18 years, along with imposing a fine. Judge Sear stated his confidence in the sentence. The conviction was based not only on abundant testimonial evidence, but especially on the circumstantial evidence, serious, vehement clues, and in perfect harmony of cause and effect with the principal fact. However, the Michelini family, powerful and highly influential, swiftly appealed the initial conviction before the young men could even begin to serve their sentences. The State Court of Justice of Espírito Santo soon intervened, making the decision to annul the sentence entirely. This moment proved that Judge Sear's circumstantial evidence, no matter how strong, was no match for deep-rooted political and economic power. The case was then passed to Judge Paolo Coppoli. He dedicated approximately 5 years to meticulously studying the daunting 39 volumes of the case files. His ultimate ruling upheld the annulment, confirming that no one among the three accused men, Dante Filio, Paolo, or Lauro, ever served a single day in prison for the murder of Araceli. Block 4, ACT 6 and conclusion. Araceli would be 45 years old today, but her case remains an unsolved mystery. After the sentences were annulled, the case was officially archived by the justice system. Following the death of their daughter, Araceli's parents ultimately divorced. Lola, Araceli's mother, initially returned to Bolivia shortly after the murder, only to come back a year later. However, the emotional toll and the failure of justice proved too much to bear, and she soon returned to Bolivia for good, where she remarried and had 2 more children, a difficult attempt at rebuilding a shattered life. Gabriel Sanchez, Araceli's father, also remarried and had a son and a daughter. Sadly, Gabriel passed away in 2001, never having witnessed the justice he desperately sought for his first daughter. For many years, Araceli's immediate family remained silent about the case. However, in 2016, Araceli's brother, Carlos Cabrera Crespo, finally spoke. What remained was the sense of impunity. He affirmed his belief in divine justice, trusting that the people responsible for his sister's horrific fate must have suffered greatly in their lives. The file on the Araceli case, My Little Monsters, is now definitively archived. We have witnessed a tragedy where the institutions of justice, the police, the courts, and the press, were ultimately overwhelmed by the influence of wealth, resulting in my greatest disappointment as a detective. This was a battle I lost, but the lesson, I assure you, is priceless. The truth about the perpetrators was never officially proven, but Araceli's death achieved a legacy that defied her murderers. The day of the crime, May 18th, became the national day to combat sexual abuse and exploitation of children and adolescents in Brazil. This is the ultimate power of her story, to transform personal pain into a collective shield. Will you let the sense of impunity in this case paralyze you with cynicism, or will you use this knowledge to strengthen your own moral resolve and fight for what is right in your community? If the shame of this case could ignite a national law, imagine the change that you can spark. What truth about power and justice did this case reveal to you? Let me know in the comments below. Now, close your eyes, sleep tight, and be careful with the shadows. I'll see you at midnight tomorrow.